Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari. Jaya Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Radhe. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashto Tarashata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prem Shri Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dhama Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dhama Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Purusottam Saitra Ki Jai. Dai Gauda Premanande. All glorious to the assembly devotees. All glorious to the assembly devotees. All glorious to the assembly devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naran Shaivan Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasan Tato Jayam Udirayet Nasupraya Shudabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. So reading from the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The name of the canto is Creative Impetus. Chapter 1, the activities of Maharaj Priyavrata. And we are on text number 31. I will be speaking on text 35. I mean, I could. But yeah, I'll read through all of it. So I'll start with 31, and then I'll go to 35. So which verse should we read from? 31? Okay. Yes, please.
Oops. Start again. Yeva uhatar rata chadana nemi kutapadikatas te sapta sindaba asan yata eva kuta sapta bhavo dvipaha.
Translation: When Priyavrata drove his chariot behind the sun, the rims of his chariot wheels created impressions that later became 7 oceans, dividing the planetary system known as Bhumandala into 7 islands. Purport: sometimes the planets in outer space are called islands. We have experience of various types of islands in the ocean, and similarly the various planets divided into 14 lokas are islands in the ocean of space. As Priyavrata drove his chariot behind the sun, he created 7 different types of oceans and planetary systems, which all together are known as Bhumandala, or Bhuloka. In the Gayatri Mantra we chant Om Bhurvasvaha Tatsavitur Vareyam. Above the Bhuloka planetary system is Bhuvarloka, and above that is Svargaloka, the heavenly planetary system. All these planetary systems are controlled by Satvita, the sun god. By chanting the Gayatri Mantra just after rising early in the morning, one worships the sun god. So my original plan is I was going to speak on the Brahma Gayatri Mantra, but after considering it, I decided that I'll just leave like a little preface to the class, that if anyone has any questions about, anyone's like a second initiated devotee and is learning about the Gayatri Mantra, they can come ask me, and I know a few references where you can learn more about it. But I felt what I was preparing didn't really accommodate the needs of like the greater audience, so I decided to skip ahead and speak on a different verse. The names of the islands are Jambu, Palaksha, Samali, Kusha, Karucha, Shaka, and Pushkara. Each island is twice as large as the one preceding it, and each is surrounded by a liquid substance, beyond which is the next island. Purport: the ocean in each planetary system has a different type of liquid. How they are situated is explained in the next verse. The 7 oceans, respectively, contain salt water, sugarcane juice, liquor, clarified butter, milk, emulsified yogurt, and sweet drinking water. All the islands are completely surrounded by these oceans, and each ocean is equal in breadth to the island it surrounds. Maharaj Priyavrata, the husband of Queen Barhismati, gave sovereignty over these islands to his respective sons, namely Agnidra, Idam Driva, Yagnabahu, Hiranya Reta, Griha Prista, Medhatiti, and Vitihotra. Thus they all became kings by the order of their father. Purport: it is understood that all the dweeps or islands are surrounded by different types of oceans, and it is said herein that the breadth of each ocean is the same as that of the island it surrounds. The length of the oceans, however, cannot equal the length of the islands. According to Viragava Acharya, the breadth of the first island is 100,000 yojanas. 1 yojana equals 8 miles. Therefore, the breadth of the first island is calculated to be 800,000 miles. The waters surrounding it must have the same breadth, but its length must be different. I'm not a good person to ask this question. King Priyavrata then gave his daughter Urjasvati in marriage to Sukra Acharya, who begot in her a daughter named Devayani. So this will be the verse I speak on. Text 35. My dear king, a devotee who has taken shelter of the dust from the lotus feet of the Lord can transcend the influence of the 6 material whips, namely hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death, and he can conquer the mind in 5 senses. However, this is not very wonderful for a pure devotee of the Lord, because even a person beyond the jurisdiction of the 4 castes, in other words, an untouchable, is immediately relieved of bondage to material existence if he utters the holy name of the Lord even once. Purport: Shukadeva Goswami was speaking to Maharaj Priyavrata about the activities of... Shukadeva Goswami was speaking to Maharaj Parikshit about the activities of King Priyavrata. And since the king might have had doubts about these wonderful, uncommon activities, Shukadeva Goswami reassured him. My dear king, he said, don't be doubtful about the wonderful activities of Priyavrata. For a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is possible because the Lord is also known as Urakrama. Urakrama is a name for Lord Vamanadev, who performed the wonderful act of occupying the 3 worlds with 3 footsteps. Lord Vamanadev requested 3 paces of land from Maharaj Bali. And when Maharaj Bali agreed to grant them, the Lord immediately covered the entire world with 2 footsteps. And for his 3rd step, he placed his foot upon Bali Maharaj's head. Sri Jayadev Goswami says, you want to chant that?
Chalayasi vikramane balamandata vamana bhadanaka neda janita janapavana keshavadrita vamana rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare.
All glories to Lord Keshava, who assumed the form of a dwarf. O Lord of the universe, who takes away everything unauspicious for the devotees, O wonderful Vamanadev, you tricked the great demon Bali Maharaj by your steps. The water that touched the nails of your lotus feet when you pierced through the coverings of the universe purifies all living entities in the form of the river Ganges. Since the Supreme Lord is all-powerful, he can do things that seem wonderful for a common man. Similarly, a devotee who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord can also do wonderful things, unimaginable to a common man, by the grace of the dust of those lotus feet. Caitanya Mahaprabhu therefore teaches us to take shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. Ainanda tanuja kinkaram patitam mam vishame babambudo kripayada vapada pankaja stitaduli sadrasam vichintaya. O son of Maharaj Nanda, I am your eternal servant, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Lord Chaitanya teaches us to come in touch with the dust of the Lord's lotus feet, for then there will undoubtedly be all success. Because of the material body, every living entity in material existence is always disturbed by sadguna. 6 whips: hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, and invalidity and death. Furthermore, another sadguna are the mind and 5 sense organs. Not to speak of a sanctified devotee, even a chandala, an outcast who is untouchable, is immediately freed from material bondage if he utters the holy name of the Lord even once. Sometimes caste brahmanas argue that unless one changes his body, he cannot be accepted as a brahmana. For since the present body is obtained as a result of past actions, one who has in the past acted as a brahmana takes birth in a brahmana family. Therefore they contend, without such a brahminical body, one cannot be accepted as a brahmana. Herein is said, however, that even Vidura Vigata, a chandala, a 5th class untouchable, is freed if he utters the holy name even once. Being freed means that he immediately changes his body. Sanat Goswami confirms this. Yatha kanchat natam yati kamsayam rasavindana vidanataha tata diksha vidanena dvijatvam jayate nirnam. When a person, even though a Chandala, is initiated by a pure devotee into chanting the holy name of the Lord, his body changes as he follows the instructions of the spiritual master. Although one cannot see how his body has changed, we must accept on the grounds of the authoritative statements of the Shastra that he changes his body. This is to be understood without arguments. This verse clearly says, Najanati bandhanam. He gives up his material bondage. The body is a symbolic representation of material bondage according to one's karma. Although sometimes we cannot see the gross body changing, chanting the holy name of the Supreme Lord immediately changes the subtle body. And because the subtle body changes, the living entity is immediately freed from material bondage. After all, changes of the gross body are conducted by the subtle body. After the destruction of the gross body, the subtle body takes the living entity from his present gross body to another. In the subtle body, the mind is predominant, and therefore if one's mind is always absorbed in remembering the activities or lotus feet of the Lord, he is to be understood to have already changed his present body and become purified. Therefore it is irrefutable that a Chandala, or any fallen or low-born person, can become a Brahmana, simply by the method of bona fide initiation. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gananjana Shilakoya Chakshurun Minitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Caitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadadmayam Dadati Svam Padantikam Kunkarati Vachalam Pangolagate Girim Tad Kripa Taraham Vande Shiguram Didataninam Vagisha Yasha Parane Lakshmi Yasha Chapakshashi Yashyaste Hridaye Samvitam Nashimham Maham Vaje. Jiva Goswami, I believe in his Tattva Sandarbha, he speaks about the preliminary prerequisite for understanding Krishna is that one has to accept his Achintya Shakti. One has to begin to perceive how Krishna is actually inconceivable to our material mind and senses. And as we go through the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we're going to see a lot of things that seem inconceivable to our material mind and senses. But it's essential for us to act with this conviction that, yes, this is a display of Krishna's Achintya Shakti. And it should be no surprise to us that we have doubts regarding some of the descriptions that we're hearing in the Bhagavatam. Because at the onset of the Bhagavatam, it's describing the condition that we are put into being born in Kali Yuga. Our qualities, as explained by the Bhagavatam, is prayena alpa yudasabhya kalal vasmin yuge janaha manda sumanda matayo manda bhagya hripattadraha. So this is describing that the people of Kali Yuga are prayena alpa yusa, which means short-lived. Previously, in other ages, people would live for, or living entities would live for extraordinary long periods of times. Their body size was also bigger. But Srila Prabhupada explains in his commentary of the Srimad Bhagavatam that people's lives are short-lived in this age, not so much because of insufficient food supply, but because of irregular habits. I mean, just last night, I was sleeping up in the ashram, and I got woken up by a helicopter at 11 o'clock at night due to a burglary on Garnet Avenue. And the helicopter was flying like right over the ashram, announcing this to the whole neighborhood. And I mean, this is a symptom of irregular habits. No one with regulated habits needs to be up at 11 o'clock at night, unless you're a pure devotee absorbed in the pastimes of Shishi Gornitai. But generally, people have no reason to be staying up at that time. But due to the influence of Kali Yuga, people stay up at that time for what purpose? For intoxication, for gambling, for illicit sex, for so many unnecessary activities, and for burglary. So for so many unnecessary activities that are which are outside of the scope of the living entity's ultimate purpose of life. So due to these irregular habits, our life is shortened considerably. The next quality that's mentioned is kalo, which means quarrelsome. Over the smallest petty little thing, people will engage in mass arguments. People will, over just a small loss of profit, will completely burn a bridge to a relationship, and it could be someone that they've known for years. It's very easy for us to become implicated in quarrelsome relationships in Kali Yuga just due to the influence of the time. And that's due to the qualities that are being mentioned in this verse. Another one of those qualities is lazy. And Srila Prabhupada explains that not only are people lazy in the matter of their activity, but they're simultaneously lazy in the matter of self-realization. I mean, you walk up and down the streets of Kali Yuga, it's very difficult to find people that are genuinely searching for the truth of life. A senior devotee was telling me that, even back in the 1960s, just to walk around Los Angeles is very common to find someone walking down the street trying to find the meaning of life, seeking out what is the truth of life. And one could argue that was due to the influence of Srila Prabhupada being on the planet. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, through Srila Prabhupada's sincere desire to spread Krishna consciousness, giving enlightenment to the hearts of the living entities during that time to seek out a higher truth in life. But nowadays, as you walk down Garnet Avenue, you're lucky to find someone who's even heard of the word meditation or can even appreciate its significance. This is due to the influence of Kali Yuga. And not only are they lazy, but they're sumanda mataya, which means they're misguided. And you can practically observe this in your own life. If you look at, from the beginning of your childhood, you basically have been trained to believe that the things that you perceive with your material senses and that your perception is the absolute truth. And because of your perception being the absolute truth, if anyone usurps that position of your opinion being the absolute truth, then that person is subject to being punished by school teachers. Everyone's opinion matters. Everyone's right. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. And this sense of perception and this idea that is absolute comes from the idea that the ultimate goal of life is pursuing the needs of the body, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and organizing our lifestyle around pursuing those activities. And as long as your idea upholds the doctrine of eat, sleep, and be merry, then it's all hunky-dory. You can believe whatever you want. But as soon as you begin to question that idea, I remember I had a teacher in college who once told me that there is no truth. And that must have been the most discouraging thing I could have heard as a student at the time. And I questioned him, and the fact that I questioned him, he was unhappy about that. So you're not allowed to question. You're not allowed to inquire. You're not allowed to ask the question, who am I beyond this mind and body? And practically speaking, when we go out and we distribute books to the people, when we interact with them and we bring up the topic of meditation and they are interested, they're saying, oh my God, thank you for giving me these books. Everyone I talk to about this, they think I'm crazy. This is the condition of Kali Yuga. They're sumanda mataya, and even if a slight little bit of intelligence has arisen in their mind, as soon as they begin to make that pursuit, there are so many envious, exploitative teachers that are ready to take advantage of those poor people and indoctrinate them into a philosophy which is completely opposed to the principles of Sanatana Dharma, which is completely opposed to the principles of Bhakti Yoga. They just simply want to teach you are void, you are nothing, and the ultimate goal of life is to realize your own state of nothingness. This is people's conception, so they're misguided. And then mandabhagya, unlucky, and due to these false gurus and due to the bad leadership, there's an atmosphere which is designed in order to perpetuate the bodily conception of life. Strip clubs, slaughterhouses, gambling casinos, all these different unnecessary ugra karma, bars, tattoo shops, all these things which are completely discordant with the ultimate purpose of life. This is the atmosphere of Kali Yuga, and so we're unlucky because this is the atmosphere we have to be exposed to at every single moment, taking in samskars which just bind us to the bodily conception of life so heavily. And then upattadraha. And due to this atmosphere, which is completely unlucky, we're constantly disturbed. We're constantly in a state of disturbance. Our mind is constantly being bombarded by material desires which don't allow us to make genuine inquiry into the nature of life, because we're so disturbed by these desires, and we're so forced into a lifestyle that requires us to some degree or another pursue these activities. So in order for us to begin to develop process, in the process of devotional service, in order for us to develop faith in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we have to become free from this contamination. As the Bhagavad Gita says, Yesam tvanakatam papam jananam punya karmanam tedanva mohanirmukta bhajante mam dridavata. That those who are jananam punya, those who have become punya karmanam, those who have engaged in pious activity in previous lives and in this life, and who are freed from the influence of sinful activities, only they can engage in the process of devotional service with dridavata, fixed determination. So, if we feel that we're having a lack of faith, if we feel we're having a lack of surrender, understand that this is just due to the condition of Kali Yuga. And if we can take some responsibility and accept the fact that no one has put me here except my own self. Due to my desires in the past, I've come to this place. Due to the things I've cultivated in my consciousness previously, I have taken birth in Kali Yuga, which is being described by the ancient Vedic literatures as being an extremely unfortunate time. So we need to become free from this bhoga-vritti. We need to become free from this propensity of trying to enjoy separately from Krishna. And if we have a desire to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, which is actually meant for those who are nirmatsaraman satam, those who are completely free from this bhoga-vritti, those who are completely free from any sense of envy, we have to learn to give up this bhoga-vritti. And although the atmosphere makes it seem completely impossible, and although it seems the odds are up against us, we have become fortunate to take the shelter of Srila Prabhupada. Brahmananda Brahmite Kona Bhagavana Jeev, Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. We have become bhagya. We have become fortunate due to the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And this fortune can make the impossible possible. So although it seems that the odds are against us, although it seems the atmosphere is completely unconducive, because we have received the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, the impossible can become possible. And this inconceivable nature of Krishna to make the impossible possible is wonderfully explained in the pastime of Lord Vamanadev. Lord Vamanadev, he was just a simple little brahmachari. And he took birth as the brother of Lord Indra. Because Lord Indra, due to offending his spiritual master, he lost the entire kingdom of the universe. And it had fallen into the hands of the daityas, the demons. And the leader of the demons was none other than Bali Maharaj. So Bali Maharaj and the demons were having a good time ruling the universe, and little Vamanadev as a brahmachari approached Bali Maharaj and simply was begging some charity. And Bali Maharaj, understanding the duty of a Satriya, which is to give alms to the brahmanas, offered Bali Maharaj whatever he liked. And Bali Maharaj says, I'll just take 3 steps of land. What was that? Vamana said. Sorry, thank you. Vamana said that, yeah, I'll just take 3 steps of land. And Bali Maharaj, he said, you're a young little boy. I don't think you're thinking so straight. I have everything in the universe. You can have whatever you like. And he says, yes, but a brahmana should be learned dissatisfied with which comes of its own accord. And even if I acquire the whole universe, if my mind is uncontrolled, then I can actually never be satisfied. So I'll just take 3 steps of land. So Bali said, all right, 3 steps of land. So with his first step, he covered one portion of the universe. And with his second step of the universe, he covered the second half of the universe. And with covering the second half of the universe, he said, Bali, what about our deal? It's not good to cheat a Brahmana. And so Bali said, my dear Lord, you can put your last footstep on my head. And previous to this, Shukracharya was warning Bali Maharaj, you better not give this boy charity. Because if you give this boy charity, you're going to lose everything. But Bali Maharaj, understanding the ultimate purpose of life, the ultimate purpose of life is saranagati, full surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, full surrender to the Lord. He said, if this is actually Krishna, then it's my duty to give to him. So with the final footstep, Vamana put his head on Bali Maharaj's head. And Bali Maharaj became blessed. And he became the example of one of the limbs of Bhakti Yoga, Atma Nivedanam. So this pastime, what it does is it gives us great hope that Krishna can make things which seem completely impossible, completely possible. Those things which seemed completely inconceivable become conceivable. Vamana was just a little brahmachari. And with his first step, he covered one half of the universe. And with the other step, he covered the second half of the universe. And the third step, he placed on his devotee's head. So hearing these inconceivable, wonderful pastimes of Krishna is our hope for overcoming the influence of Kali Yuga. Shrinvatam Sokatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hirantyasto hi Badrani Vidu Noti Saritsatam. Krishna's on our side. He wants to help us, and he's sitting in our heart as the Vidu Noti. He's sitting in our heart as the cleansing principle. At once Krishna sees that we put ourselves in front of transcendental sound vibration, in front of the message of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna begins to work as the Vidu Noti. He says, oh, this person is trying to hear my pastimes. Oh, this person is becoming interested in the process of devotional service. Let me assist him. Let me help him. Let me help him become free for those things which are limiting him from his surrender. Let me help him intensify his determination to attain me. Let me create circumstances in which the process of devotional service can be expanded and the inclination for material enjoyment can be diminished. So the pastimes of Krishna act like a medicine for the mad mind of the conditioned soul. And not only do we have the medicine of hearing Krishna's pastimes, but simultaneously we have the diet of Krishna Prasadam. The diet of Krishna Prasadam is so auspicious. I've experienced sometimes, my mind will be like super agitated, or I'll be like super stressed out with something, or I have a super bad day on book distribution. And the best part of my day is going back to the Sankirtan van and eating mangoes that have been offered to Krishna. And everything just goes into perspective. You're like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm surrendering my life to God. Everything's fine. Forget what they said to me. Forget what they did to me. Everything's perfect. Everything's completely in tune. I'm exactly where I need to be. So not only do we have the Srimad Bhagavatam, not only do we have Krishna's pastimes, but when Lord Chaitanya was asked by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, what is the best process of devotional service? Lord Chaitanya answered, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam. Kalo Nasteva, 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 Ganthyaranyata. Nama-sankirtan is the best process of devotional service. And Sanatana Goswami gives a wonderful explanation of why nama-sankirtan is such an exalted process of devotional service, and why it supersedes the other process of devotional service, including archanam and including shravanam. Archanam, it requires cleanliness, and it requires rules and regulations to be followed. So not everyone is able to engage in archanam immediately. You have to receive Brahman Diksha. You have to, follow the Pancharatriki rules very closely in order to not commit offenses. There's so many things that can go wrong. So it's a wonderful process, but it's not as exalted as nama-sankirtan. And then shravanam it's also simultaneously a wonderful process, but in order for us to engage in it properly, we have to hear from the right person. Although the Srimad Bhagavatam is there, if you go to India, there's about 108 million people that can cheat you. from hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. And that thing which once acted as a medicine can actually act as a poison if we hear from the wrong people. So with Shravanam, it's also not quite a perfect process because we have to find the right person. So it's slightly little bit more difficult. I don't want to say it's not a perfect process, but it's a little bit more difficult. But with Kirtan, anyone can join in, and we've practically seen that when we go on Harinam Sankirtan in the streets, the homeless guy, the drunk lady, the big muscular guy, all of them can join in the process of Nam Sankirtan. And this is glorified in the first chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Aphanam shamstatim goram yanama vivishogranam tata sadyo vimucheta yadbabeti swayam bayam. That simply by hearing the holy name, simply by chanting the holy name, even once unconsciously, one can become freed from all sinful reactions. And that's what's being glorified in this story. And this is what is freeing Maharaj Parikshit from his doubt, is this promise that Shukadeva Goswami is giving, and his faith and his conviction in the holy name of Krishna, and the potency that that can have on the living entity, and how that holy name can empower the living entity to do that which is impossible and make it possible. And we see this with Srila Prabhupada. When Srila Prabhupada was beginning to leave his body, what's his name? Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj. Babaji Maharaj was with B.R. Sridhar Maharaj, and they were sitting in the same room with Srila Prabhupada. And Babaji Maharaj, he said to him, look how much faith Swami Maharaj has in the holy name. If he didn't have such faith in the holy name, he wouldn't have been able to spread it all around the world. So through the faith that Srila Prabhupada had in the holy name, he was able to give that holy name to the world. So that holy name which empowered Srila Prabhupada, that holy name which is being used to free Maharaj Parikshit from his doubt, that holy name is being given to us by Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu through the medium of Srila Prabhupada. And it is not any ordinary name that has been given in any previous age, but it's a particular kind of holy name. When the Sankirtan party from Navadvip was coming into Jagannath Puri, Gopinath Acharya and Maharaj Patra Puruja were standing on the rooftop, and Maharaj Patra Puruja says, I'm from Orissa. I'm the king of this land, and I've seen Kirtan before, but what kind of Kirtan is this? And Gopinath Acharya said, this is Premanam Sankirtan. So this holy name is different from the holy name that's given in different ages. This holy name is filled with Krishna Prema. This holy name will make the most unqualified people qualified to realize the topmost realizations of Krishna in Vrindavan. Krishna's intimate pastimes with his divine associates in Vrindavan. So if we can learn to take shelter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, if we can learn to take shelter of the holy name, we can gradually come to understand the essence of why such elaborate descriptions are given in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Such inconceivable descriptions are given in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And those inconceivable descriptions are there to teach us how wonderful Krishna is. Because as we go through the Bhagavatam and we begin to see how wonderful Krishna is, how extraordinary his opulence and his Shakti is, when we enter into the 10th canto and we begin to read the intimate pastimes of Krishna with his most beloved associates, the Vrajvasis, we will not misunderstand the position of those associates, and we will not misunderstand the person who we are reading about. And we will begin to appreciate the unique devotion that the Vrajvasis have for such a wonderful person. We will begin to see how fortunate those people are, and if we become fortunate, we will develop a desire for service for those people. And this is the ultimate goal of reading Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the ultimate goal of chanting the holy name. It's not simply to become freed from our anarthas. It's not simply to become free from sin. It is meant to give us an inclination for service to the Vaishnavas. It is meant to give us an inclination for service in the realm of Vrindavan and the realm of Navadvip. It is meant to awaken a genuine attitude of service and submission to the previous acharyas. And this is confirmed by Rupa Goswami. Ta nama rupa charitasu sakirtananu smrid yor kramena rasanam anasini yojat. Tistan vrajay tananuragi jananugami kalam niyet akilam iti upadesha smaram. It is to fill our day 24 hours with the holy name and Bhagavatam, and develop a yearning for the service to the residents of Vrindavan. And how fortunate we have become that an eternal associate of Krishna in Vrindavan has come to the land of the Mlechas and Yavanas. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pashtyacha Deshatarine. In order to eradicate us from voidness, in order to eradicate us from the inclination for impersonalism, that dearmost servant of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has come to liberate the land of the Mlechas and the Yavanas and give us the holy name, give us the Srimad Bhagavatam, and not only that, give us the service to give the Bhagavatam and the holy name to the world, and simultaneously give us service to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by engaging in that service. Om Tat Sat. So we'll open it up for discussion if there's any questions or comments. Yes, Prabhu.
Whenever that verse, thank you very much. Very inspiring lecture. Thank you. Whenever that verse, Yesham Tatakatam Papam, Jananam Punya Karmanam, is quoted, sometimes we might wince a little because it's quite the high standard. It's what the Brahmins are saying you don't have. We had the pious life last time, and that's why we have Brahmin birth this time. You didn't have that, obviously, because you were born in a Malecha family and country. So, but it was nicely covered when you said, but the potency of the holy name, the mercy of the spiritual master, it destroys all sin immediately. And therefore, it doesn't matter how sinful one may be in the last life or even in this life, when one takes to the process and surrenders, then all that's cleared away.
If you go to that translation in the Bhagavad Gita, that verse, Yesham Tvam Takatam Papam, I think you find, and it's explained in the purport, that there's two meanings to this papam. One is, of course, your sinful reactions. When you dive into Krishna consciousness, you're chanting the holy name under the guidance of a pure devotee, then those impediments can be reduced practically to nil. In other words, whatever you've done in the past, if you take it now, you'll be fine. But it also, the understanding is given that in this life, you can't be thinking that you're going to be performing sins and also advancing in devotional service. It may be obvious, but it's a very important point. One little editing perspective on this, because you talked about Vamanadev. This dwarf, the dwarf incarnation. Now, in the Oxford English Dictionary, Prabhupada took a lot of his meanings from there because he learned English from. Dwarf means diminutive person. Like a midget. Okay, that's what Vamana was. He was small. He was like miniature. But in American English, I looked it up again just to give you the shastra on it. A dwarf, noun, a person of unusually small stature, especially one whose bodily proportions are abnormal. A person of unusually small stature, insignificant person. No, that's not what we think Vamana is. So, Prabhupada often uses the phrase dwarf Brahman, in which dwarf is used as an adjective, which is fine. That's a smaller than normal size. That's actually what. So I always like to say, rather than just dwarf Brahman, which Prabhupada often he would use that phrase. So it's just one thing to watch out for. Because in America, dwarf, immediately you think of Quasimodo. It's got this thing, which is not at all. Brahman is especially beautiful. It's just the opposite. So kind of a.
Thank you.
I think you said something about, I think you mentioned that you said this holy name is not, any old holy name. Your wording was like, this isn't the holy name of previous ages. Could you elaborate on that more?
Yeah, this is explained when because in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita it's explained that there is, within every Kali Yuga, nama-sankirtan is the Yuga Dharma. But when Caitanya Mahaprabhu appears, he blesses that holy name, so to speak, with Prema nama-sankirtan. Basically, through Caitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, through the holy name, he's giving himself to the living entities. And Caitanya Mahaprabhu is Sri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahi Anya. So that holy name is filled with the potential and the potency to awaken spontaneous loving devotional service for Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. Whereas in other ages, from what I've understood, is it only brings one to the platform of Vaikuntha. So the holy name in Kali Yuga, when Caitanya Mahaprabhu appears, is a specific kind of holy name. It has a magnificent potency. And to understand this a little bit more elaborately, the pastime that I mentioned where the nama-sankirtan party is coming in from Navadvip into Jagannath Puri, where Maharaj Pratapurujan, I think Gopinath Acharya or Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, I forget, are standing on the roof and they're seeing this. I believe Prabhupada gives commentary to elaborate more on that. Maybe Rajendranandana or Dravida Prabhu could speak a little bit more elaborately on this particular point.
So then, in previous ages, if Harinam didn't bring you to, wouldn't bring you to Prema, it would bring you to Vaikuntha. But does that mean that the particular method for that time, like deity worship, would then bring you, or what would bring you to Prema then in those ages?
Well, there's different categories of Prema.
Oh, so it could bring you to Vaikuntha.
Yeah,
Prema.
you can have Krishna Prema, but you could be existing in Aishvarya Bhav.
But you wouldn't bring you to this mellow of.
Yeah,
Prema
you just basically
ages.
be existing in the Dasya Rasa. You wouldn't have the qualification to go into the realm of Vrindavan. That's only given through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
So you cannot enter the realm of Vrindavan in the previous ages, only in Kali Yuga.
From my understanding, yes. From my understanding. Nanda Kirtanas.
I just had a question.
Super rare.
Yeah, just a question on the same topic. Was it the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra that we're used to that was in previous ages? And what to speak of this day of Brahma, what about previous days of Brahma? Were they chanting this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra?
That's a good question.
Was it like something else, like Om Namo Narayanaya Namaha or something like that?
It's a good question. It'd be interesting to hear in a Harinam Sankirtan, Om Narayana. I don't know. It's a really good question. It's a very good question.
Okay,
Do you know if in previous ages there was a different holy name that was chanted for the process of Nam Sankirtan, or if it's the same Maha Mantra?
One thing I did when I was there every day of Brahma.
Oh.
Is it messing up? Hare Krishna. This is like a comment, but maybe you can elaborate on it, because
Sure.
You're saying when Krishna sees that the jiva is somewhat sincere, that we have an inclination to perform devotional service or chant or hear his pastimes, etc., that he'll make arrangements in our life, so he gives facilities for us to make advancement. And one thing you said is that he'll make obstacles, obstacles like disappear in our life, or whatever is will hamper our devotional service, he'll help disappear. I've experienced in my own life that it doesn't happen so sudden. It's like sometimes it almost seems like he creates obstacles so that you have to kind of like get over that obstacle, but once you pass that, whatever it is, then you no longer have to deal with it in your life.
Yeah.
I'm not really explaining myself to the best that I wanted to. Like, say you have some attachment to, for example, you have like an attachment to your family, like your parents or something like that. And you're like in the brahmacharya ashram, So, you're doing your thing, you're doing your devotional service, and then Krishna creates a circumstance where that affection for your family comes up very strong for some reason. And you have to get through that. It's almost like a test. Do you really want devotional service? Do you want Krishna? Or do you still have affection for your family? And so you have to go through that test and that obstacle, and it almost seems like when you're going through it, Krishna's not taking away the obstacle, rather he's putting it right in front of my face, and he's making it even stronger. But once you get past that, then in the long run, as the years go by, then that attachment or that affection, you see, oh, actually that obstacle came up so I can become thoroughly detached, in the long run. Can you comment on that?
Yeah. Lord Brahma, I don't know the whole shloka, I should. Lord Brahma says in the 8th chapter of the 10th canto, Tat kam nu pamsam susamikshmano punjava evatma kritam vipakam. You know the rest of the verse? What's that? Thank you. 14th chapter, 8th verse. Sorry. Thank you again. So, in that verse, Krishna is kind of explaining exactly what you're saying, but even more pointedly, you'll read in the commentary by Sridhar Swami that the BBT has translated that Krishna will put people in particular circumstances in order to purify them of any type of vested interest they still have in the material energy. So that verse itself, it says that to those devotees who patiently and tolerate the effects of their previous sinful activities, their previous karma, while simultaneously go on taking shelter of me and offer respects to me, they qualify themselves for the kingdom of God. So in the commentary, Sridhar Swami explains that Krishna will put the devotee in particular circumstances in order to purify them of those last vestiges of material interest. There's for instance, if you burn toast, there's still a fragrance of the burnt toast, even though the incident's done. Even though, you threw out the toast, you threw out the toaster, everything's gone, there's still the smell of the burnt toast in the house. And so it takes a little bit of time for that smell to go away. So Krishna will make an arrangement in our lives and put us through different circumstances in order to free us of those last vestiges of material attachment. Sridhar Swami explains, and he says that all the devotee has to do is to stay alive in Krishna consciousness. And he qualifies himself for achieving the kingdom of God. So if one can somehow or other stay connected to the main thing while going through those tests, Krishna will, give them the strength to go through the test. It's not like Krishna will abandon the devotee. Krishna promises he'll be there for the devotee. He'll take care of the devotee when he goes through those tests. But simultaneously, so he'll be there for the devotee, and simultaneously, he'll give the devotee the strength from within to overcome it. That's one of the reasons why we worship Lord Balaram, is because Krishna, he gives us the sword of knowledge, but Lord Balaram gives us the strength to carry it. And we get the strength to carry the sword of knowledge by worshiping and serving the spiritual master. So if somehow or other we can keep the instruction of the spiritual master our main focus in life, despite all the tests that we're going through. You just stay on the road. For instance, Raghunath Das Goswami in his Manashiksha, he says, I'm on the road of devotional service, but I'm being bound by the neck by my previous sinful activities who are trying to pull me off the road. And I am crying out to the devotees in Krishna to please help me. And so Raghunath Das Goswami is saying that the only way to overcome these attachments of our previous association with the material energy is to cry out to Krishna and his devotees. So Krishna is going to give us the strength. Krishna is going to help us out. But it's on our part, we have to stick with the main thing, no matter how hard it is. If we can just stay alive in the process, then we can easily overcome those obstacles. And you're right, according to Sridhar Swami, those last vestiges will be purified of them if we go through those things and continue to take shelter of the process of devotional service. I don't know if that answers your question or satisfies your curiosity.
Yeah. This particular verse that you mentioned, Tena Kampam, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada mentions in the Nectar of Devotion, he says that, which you don't really see him, I mean, I don't think you see him saying that about any other verse, but he says this should be the guide for all devotees, this particular verse.
Yeah, it's true.
So to read that verse and to read Srila Prabhupada comment on that, right? Read that verse, read that purport. Should be the guide. That's what he says for all devotees. So anyways, I think Daniel. Okay.
Another important aspect in this discussion is Srila Prabhupada says it's natural to have affection for your family. We're not dead stones. Attachment's another thing. If we think they're the source of our shelter or the source of our happiness or in any way unrelated to Krishna, then that would be an obstacle, that would be a disturbance. It could take us away from our determined service. But to appreciate, to have affection is, if you don't, then most likely, what do I say? You're emotionally stunted. It's impersonalism. That's where you're headed. And building those walls instead of appreciating how whatever we've received from them for whatever obligation we owe to them, we're trying to focus in pleasing Krishna, and he'll take care of the obligations, he'll take care of them, but you know, when you know, Mother's Day, Father's Day, this or that, I mean, how's it hurt to call mom or dad or, you know, to care for them? We owe them a lot. You wouldn't have that particular body if they hadn't given it to you. And they're going to be rewarded by Guru and Krishna for having done that service if you continue on nicely in your... So there's a big difference between affection and attachment. Attachment is that which, you know, you develop the qualities of. If they're not devotees, you don't want to develop their qualities. Does that make sense to you? Now, Prabhupada says it very specifically, black and white. To have affection is natural. Even the tiger has affection for its cubs. So that's not the problem. The problem is, are we staying focused in our service to Krishna?
And then Daniel. Or maybe Darius? You gotta turn it on.
You have to surrender to it because we have an audience.
Thank you for the nectar. Your tone of voice touched my soul. You was like, you had sincerity and it came from the heart. I noticed you was mentioning Age of Kali. I wanted to add to that majority of the people in Age of Kali are hypocrites. Majority of the people love living a lie. They love being lied to. How can you present the absolute truth to people who are, you know, they used to that. They are absorbed in being lied to or living a lie.
Sure. Amazing question. Well, there's a purport in the 4th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam where Srila Prabhupada says that seeing the desire of the pure devotee, Lord Krishna inspires the living entities from within their heart to seek the absolute truth. So we actually aren't the ones trying to convince them. Srila Prabhupada, he explains in the introduction, the Nectar of Devotion, that our only goal is to serve the purpose of the previous acharyas. And whether people become convinced or not by our words, by our actions, it's not in our hands. We just simply try to be an instrument for the previous acharyas. We simply try to act in such a way that we're trying to please them. And if by their mercy people become inspired from within the heart, then they can become convinced. But it's not through our own endeavor that people will become convinced. The age of Kali is such an ocean of faults. But the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, the mercy of the previous Acharya is huge. And so if we can simply be an instrument for that mercy, then people can become convinced. But it's not through any arrangement of any subtle or material energy. It's simply through the mercy of Srila Prabhupada inspiring from within the heart to somehow become sincere in the process of devotional service.
That verse you quoted, Tatena Kampam, Susamikshama. Your explanation was fine, but the emphasis on that verse is seeing everything that happens to you as Krishna's mercy.
Yeah.
Even the so-called bad things. This is just a result of my own sinful activity. And the things that happen that are favorable, he said, oh, Krishna's so kind, he's given me more facility to serve. And something may happen, on the negative side, oh, Krishna's so kind, he's minimized it. And he's teaching me how to tolerate. So in every case, you're maintaining your positive feeling toward Krishna. That's the impact of that verse. But it's interesting, I'd forgotten that passage where he said this should be the motto, or this should be, because obviously it says if one can maintain this attitude, then you buy a ticket to Vaikuntha. And in related to that verse is the other one, the other part of the theme is that Krishna will move us along. If we're sincere, he'll put obstacles in our way, or he'll give us certain things that will push us along, and how we react to that is key. So Prabhupada would give himself as an example very humbly. This verse, Yasyahanam Argunami Harishe Tadanang Shanai, which is related to Tatenu Kampam. Krishna is speaking to Yudhishthira in the latter part of the 10th canto, and he says, for those who I show my real mercy, I gradually take away all their wealth. And then what happens? Then their family is upset with them. In other words, there's a material element there. And so they're more likely to go toward renunciation. And I think related to this, am I wrong, the Avanti Brahmin is like a perfect example, where this is the one that his mantra are the ones that the sannyasis learn, because he became very poor and he got kicked out and, like that. So that's, I think, part of what you're talking about. If you're sincere, Krishna will help you, oftentimes by taking away things that you're relying on, that you're attached to, and making you have no other recourse but to just surrender.
Do we have time for Daniel, or should we? I think we should, just okay, we can speak about it during breakfast. Is that okay? Okay.